Hi, kids. It's me, Ronald McDonald, and I'm on the set of my very first motion picture ever. It's a movie called Mac and Me, and it stars my little friend from outer space here. His name is Mac, and I want to introduce you to him. Mac? Anybody seen Mac? Where'd he go?
Paging Ronald McDonald.
Well, listen, I've got to go now.
You're wanted in makeup.
Makeup? Me?
Film is a magical art form. It can make you laugh, make you cry, and make you scream like almost nothing else can. This series is about films that make you do those things, sure, but it's mainly about films that make you say, "What? Huh? Was that intentional?" My name is Connor. I'm a filmmaker, educator, and connoisseur of terrible, terrible films. I'm here to be your guide to the realm of cinematic schadenfreude. It's Trashterpiece Theater, the very best of bad movies. Mac and Me is a 95-minute long commercial for Coke, Skittles, and McDonald's. No, wait, start over. Mac and Me is a shameless ripoff of one of the most beloved classic films of all. No, wait. Can we start over? Mac and Me is a science fiction fantasy film released on August 12, 1988. The way I see it, I could start off this review in one of two ways. The part of me that likes to see the silver lining in things would describe it as a heartfelt but ultimately misguided attempt to use a fusion of artistic and corporate interests in order to benefit a children's charity. But the jaded, cynical side of me would describe it as an artless, nonsensical, and completely shameless product designed to market fast food to children, while at the same time profiting by ripping off one of the greatest films of all time. Either way you slice it, Mac and Me is an amusingly baffling B-movie, which maintains a cult following to this day. I'm going to break down some of the reasons why. But first off, we need context.
Want to come to my place and learn our new song? Yeah! Food, folks, and fun.
Despite popular belief, McDonald's did not create, produce, or even finance Mac and Me, at least directly. It all starts with a film producer named R.J. Lewis. I'm having difficulty finding a photo of Mr. Lewis, so I'm going to use this generic businessman that I found on the internet instead. Sorry, bud. Anyway, in the early to mid 1980s, R.J. Lewis had a string of professional success. He produced the first two Karate Kid films, which at the box office had a combined gross of about $200 million. Meanwhile, in 1982, Universal releases E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, which was a massive critical and financial success. E.T. pulls in over $600 million in its initial theatrical run, which for over a decade made it the highest grossing film ever, until it was eclipsed by another Spielberg film, Jurassic Park. The mid-80s was also a period of exponential growth for a certain humble little hamburger chain you may have heard of, McDonald's. McDonald's was everywhere in the 80s, as one of the main players in what would later become known as the Burger Wars, a series of escalating marketing campaigns between McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's.
Where's the beef?
Ads featuring Ronald McDonald were everywhere. Prices were slashed to undercut the competition, and sales skyrocketed. Ronald McDonald was a hot commodity. R.J. Lewis had worked in the past on McDonald's commercials, so it's safe to say he had connections within the company, especially with its charity arm, Ronald McDonald House. Lewis looked at the success of E.T. and the prevalence of the Golden Arches at the time and saw what must have seemed like the opportunity of a lifetime. For about 3 years before the film was produced, Lewis shopped his idea to anyone at McDonald's who would listen. His vision included promotional materials in every McDonald's store, which was a new concept at the time, and perhaps most critically, he proposed donating the profits of the film to Ronald McDonald House charities. Lewis secured funding from Jim Williams, the CEO of Golden State Foods, a food distributor that had exactly one client, McDonald's. Williams was sold on the idea of benefiting charities, so he signed on to finance the picture, which had an estimated production budget of $13 million, equivalent to about $30 million in 2018 money. Lewis claims, "I'm still the only person in the universe that ever had the exclusive motion picture rights to the McDonald's trademark." So R.J. Lewis had theoretically everything he needed to execute his vision. A genre film director named Stuart Raffle, a competent cinematographer whose credits included The Goonies, a great composer, and the blessing of arguably the most powerful brand on the planet. What went wrong exactly? Well, a lot of stuff. Let's start from the beginning. The story. The film opens on a mysterious alien world where we're greeted by, oh my god! 4 horrifying alien homunculi drinking straight from the ground with a bendy straw. They're interrupted by a space probe, which sucks them up with a vacuum after they start messing with it. Do spacecraft like that usually fly straight back that fast? I don't know. Anyway, the craft lands back on Earth where the aliens escape, causing massive destruction and probably senseless loss of life. The smallest alien, who we'll eventually start calling Mac, gets separated from his family and ends up in traffic where he causes more needless property damage and injury. It's a movie for kids! We finally meet the film's protagonist, Eric Cruz, portrayed by Jade Calgary. He's moving to Los Angeles with his mom and brother, and luckily for Mac, doesn't notice when a 3-foot-tall puppet sneaks into their van and starts stealing his Coke.
Wonder what they were looking for.
Omelets with eyes.
The family moves in, Eric meets his new neighbor Debbie, and mysterious things start happening around the house. Mac demonstrates his extremely poorly defined magic powers by doing things like making the TV stay on when it's unplugged, and driving Eric's RC car around by itself. It's all intercut with unintentionally horrifying scenes of Mac's family wandering around in the desert. In the most infamous scene in the film, Mac saves Eric from drowning after his wheelchair rolls off a cliff.
Like...
After the wheelchair scene, there's a long stretch of time where the pacing takes an absolute nosedive. Mac and Eric basically have a series of near misses where they almost run into each other, but the incidents don't really escalate so much as happen one after another. At one point, Mac just straight up destroys their entire house, then magically fixes it in the morning, making the scene have basically no consequence or impact at all. Finally, 45 minutes into the film, Eric and Mac meet for the first time, after Eric and Debbie capture him in a vacuum cleaner. Eric somehow knew that he could capture the alien in a vacuum cleaner. Not sure how that happened. Maybe he read the script. Mac leaves behind cryptic clues to try and point out where his family is, but the human characters have no idea what he wants, so there's no stakes or any urgency to the story at all. It's just like, hey, there's an alien creature around here. Okay, neat. Hey, want to go to my friend's birthday party?
Hey, why don't you invite Eric to Brittany's birthday tomorrow?
You want to come?
Sure.
The birthday party invite leads into the other infamous sequence of the film. Debbie's mom arrives to pick them up for the party just as Mac shows up in Eric's living room. So Eric comes up with the dumbest plan ever. Dress Mac up as a teddy bear and bring him along to the party. Ignoring the fact that Eric has a Mac-sized teddy bear costume for no adequately explored reason, how does he expect to keep Mac still long enough to convince people that he's a toy? Well, the answer is he doesn't.
Keep still.
Does your bear move?
Oh, yeah. He's one of those new computerized kind.
But I thought you said you had him a long time.
I have. He just got new microchips.
They drive to the party and all of a sudden the film becomes a combination music video and commercial. I can't possibly describe how abrupt this transition is, so just watch. By the way, this scene marks the feature film debut of Jennifer Aniston. I think this is her, but I could be wrong. So naturally, Debbie's friend's birthday party is at a McDonald's, and this place is packed with so many people they're spilling out into the parking lot. This is the most lit children's birthday party possibly ever. Eric meets up with his brother and Debbie's sister Courtney, who of course works at McDonald's, and Mac starts getting into trouble.
Oh, Matt, give me that. Did you see that? Yeah, there's something on there. I don't believe it. It's freaking.
Then he starts dancing, and a full-blown musical number just starts happening in the middle of the film.
What's he doing?
While all of this stuff is going on, government mooks from NASA show up to try to capture Mac. So Eric and Mac have to run away in a hilarious chase sequence. They race through a residential neighborhood and cause massive property damage at the Sears where Eric's mom works. Eventually, Eric's brother catches up to him in the family van, and after they get away, they decide to help Mac find his family. Notice how they don't do this by figuring out the clues he left behind, but because they just decide to drive in the direction that Mac is pointing.
We're gonna go. Come on. Let's do it.
All right.
So they drive off without telling their parents, and they put together what Mac was trying to say with his clues from earlier in the film.
That's it.
It's a sign, not a store.
Looks like he wants to go down there.
He's picking up some sort of signal.
It's presented as if they're clever for figuring it out, but really they don't. They just kind of followed Mac's pointing, and connecting the dots was entirely incidental. Anyway, the clues lead them to a cave, inside of which Mac's family is lying on the ground dead. Are you enjoying the movie, kids? Fortunately, Eric is able to revive them using a can of Coke. The family is brought back to life by the delicious, refreshing taste of one of the many exciting offerings in the Coca-Cola family of products, and are reunited with Mac to live happily ever after. That's it! Wait, there's like 15 more minutes? Okay, before we get to that, I really feel the need to do an aside. Mac and Me versus E.T. It's no secret to anyone with eyes that Mac and Me is a blatant copy of E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. I knew this when I watched the film for the first time, but I was still blown away at how many elements are shamelessly lifted from Spielberg's classic film. The main story beats of E.T. are lifted wholesale, and it even goes so far as to copy entire scenes and even names of characters. What makes the film so ridiculous, though, is not the fact that it copies E.T. It's that it copies E.T. with seemingly no awareness of what makes the themes and elements from that film work. What makes Mac and Me a cult film instead of basically a late 80s version of an Asylum movie is what's not lifted directly from E.T. Let's compare these elements, shall we? Group of aliens end up on Earth. One alien gets separated. Sensitive 80s boy protagonist with a single mother and a brother. Got Elliot and you've got Eric. Brother is named Michael in both films. Little boy thinks he sees alien creature, but no one believes him. Boy lures alien with promise of sugary food/drink. In E.T. it's Reese's Pieces, in Mac and Me it's Coke. Demonstration of alien powers. Alien gets sick, except in E.T. it's like motivated and actually raises the stakes and it makes sense. In Mac and Me it happens for literally no reason and is never referenced again. Alien dressed up in people clothes in a chase through a suburban environment, running away from shadowy government agents. Have to help the alien find his people. Lowest point with aliens dead/dying. Except in E.T. it's like super emotional and makes you cry. And in Mac and Me you don't give a flying because these aliens are abominations in the eyes of God. Aliens come back to life and everyone's happy. That's how E.T. more or less wraps up. So naturally you'd assume that Mac and Me would, oh no, wait, no, it's still going. Oh my god, stop, what are you doing? Aliens break window on van to get Coke. Aliens try to rob the grocery store and knock over a whole bunch of Coke cans. Some poor guy spent a whole lot of time putting those up. Aliens get shot at by police and a gas station blows up. Eric dies from looking at the explosion. The aliens are alive for no reason and bring Eric back to life. And finally, the film ends with a completely bizarre courtroom scene in which, after a painfully long tracking shot, the camera pans around to reveal that Mac's family are being sworn in as citizens of the United States. The single biggest difference, in my opinion, between Mac and Me and E.T. is the script. I don't just mean the dialogue, even though the dialogue in Mac and Me is god-awful.
It looks like an omelet with 2 eyes. It must have been some sort of alien.
Hey, my daddy's pulling the knife. I think it was a drunk. Communing with the earth spirits.
Right. Welcome to California, bud.
Come on, let's go down the bottom of the hill and back.
Okay, I'm gonna beat you.
I mean, the story beats, structure, and pacing are all totally off. Nothing feels motivated until almost the very end of the film, so the characters just kind of meander through different events in a way that is the exact opposite of engaging. The structure is totally out of whack. What feels like the emotional climax of the film comes more towards the middle than the end. making it feel like the ending drags on too long, and robbing the actual climax of the film of what little impact it had to begin with. Unlike many bad films, we can actually point to a specific, concise reason for why this is. The script was a hastily completed mess that the director finished while the film was about to enter production. Director Stuart Rafel has said that when he agreed to direct Mac and Me, there was no script. R.J. Lewis disputes this account, but Rafel says he wrote the script on his weekends off in his hotel room, while the production was hemorrhaging money paying a crew to stand around not shooting something that wasn't written yet. I don't think it's entirely fair to blame Rafel for the bad script though. He didn't have much time or help. So I think Lewis has to take the L on this one. So we can blame him for the half rip-off, half completely incomprehensible story, but what I want to know is who to blame for Mac's family. E.T. had kind of a cute design. Like, I don't immediately want to hug E.T., but he's endearing. I know some people are scared of him, but overall, most seem to agree that he's a cute looking character. Then you have Mac, this bug-eyed rubber monstrosity with close to no articulation, and even worse, Mac's family. In E.T., I think the decision to make all of E.T.'s race look the same was deliberate and a good choice. It sort of adds this subtle kumbaya we're all the same subtext. It also means that you're being shown E.T.'s childlike and inquisitive nature through editing and visuals, rather than just being shown that he's literally smaller than the other aliens. In Mac and Me, the decision was made to have Mac's parents and sister be played by actual people inside of costumes, but with the same low-quality puppet heads that were used for Mac himself. That's not a damning idea in and of itself, but the problem is the execution is terrible. They look like deranged sea monkeys. Their skin is so mottled and diseased looking. The mother character wears a dress for no reason even though they have no discernible sex characteristics. And the way the father character walks is so off-putting and unintentionally scary. I can't tell if he was told to walk that way by the director or if the costume restricted his movement. But either way, he looks like creeping death. He's like the old lady from It Follows. In the opening act, there are numerous cutaway shots of the family wandering in the desert trying to find Mac. Honestly, throw some different color grading on these shots, change the soundtrack up, and boom, you've got an outtake from a horror film. The design of the aliens doesn't even make sense from an in-universe biological perspective, and yes, I'm doing this. In the opening scene, we're shown the family drinking out of the ground with a straw, trying to set up the idea that Coca-Cola chemically resembles whatever they drink on their home planet. So this is presumably most or all of their diet, since it's almost the only thing Mac ever consumes on Earth other than Skittles. If that's the case, and the liquid comes from holes in the ground that you need to suck up with a straw, why didn't the aliens evolve to have, say, a proboscis? You know, something that sucks up their food through a narrow hole. They just have these awful, unmoving little vestigial anus mouths. You might say, that would be awful scary. I have two rebuttals to this. One, anteaters. Anteaters are adorable. Make Mac an anteater alien. Problem solved. That would have been amazing. Two, the current designs are freaking scary. Several times throughout the film, side characters get freaked out by the adult aliens, and Eric and company insist, they're not going to hurt you. Don't be afraid, it's fine.
Step away from them! They're not gonna hurt you! Move it now! Move it! Come on! They don't understand, they're not gonna hurt anyone!
I don't blame them, I'm terrified. Soundtrack. Here's the part of the review where I'm going to hand out my gold star of the day to Mac and Me for getting one thing right. Sadly, they also almost completely waste it. I'm talking about the film's original score, which was composed by actual composer and professional Alan Rickman impersonator, Alan Silvestri. He's worked on a few classic films, Forrest Gump, Predator, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but what he's best known for is doing the score for all three Back to the Future films. So you've got a solid score from a lauded composer. It's a slam dunk, right? A lot of what made E.T. so emotionally resonant was John Williams' classic score. Unfortunately, the producers of Mac and Me both did not use the score enough and misused it as well. The highway scene during the opening sequence uses this sprightly, mischievous score to provide the backdrop for a horrific multi-car pileup where a guy gets set on fire. The film's spacey, mysterious main theme is used to death, and also completely inappropriately, like during the fake-out death scene with Mac's family in the cave. However, when I say the score isn't used enough, I mean that many scenes without it use original pop songs instead. These songs are not all bad, to be fair. Some of them are pretty catchy, but they don't fit with the film at all, and make some scenes just feel like a music video instead of being part of a film. The soundtrack for a motion picture should align with and enhance the mood and tone of the story. You can't just layer pop music on top of the movie to make it automatically more appealing or something. And we could hardly talk about scenes feeling like a music video without mentioning the elephant in the room. Product placement. Possibly the biggest reason for Mac and Me's infamy/cult following is the pervasive and obnoxious product placement present throughout the film. Let's get something straight right off the bat. I do not hate product placement. I understand why it exists, and when done right, it's a win-win. The filmmakers get the money to tell the story they want, and manufacturers get a boost in visibility. You don't have to look too far to see a film that handles product placement correctly. E.T. has many mentions of Reese's Pieces, but it's not obnoxious, it's actually tied into the plot, and it doesn't distract you. Sales of Reese's Pieces actually went up 60% after E.T. premiered. It's an example of product placement that worked. E.T. doesn't stop for 10 minutes in the middle of the story so that Elliot and E.T. can dance in a candy store. Also, let's not let some of the other offenders in Mac and Me off the hook. McDonald's is obviously the big one, but there's also plenty of product placement for Coke, even going so far as to make the central alien character literally need Coke to survive. Skittles also make an obnoxious appearance in a later scene as a laughably blunt stand-in for the Reese's Pieces from E.T. And also, let's not forget Sears, the now basically bankrupt chain of department stores. Eric's mom moved their entire family across the country to accept a job at Sears, and later in the film there's a hilarious chase scene that goes through the store. But obviously, the star of the show is Mickey D's. And boy oh boy does this film mention McDonald's a lot, and with a level of shamelessness that I found shocking.
It's McDonald's, huh?
Yeah. Why don't you stop by for a Big Mac?
Debbie's sister Courtney works at McDonald's and wears her McDonald's uniform for almost the entire film. Of course, there's also the amazingly ill-conceived decision to name the alien character Mac, which we're told stands for Mysterious Alien Creature.
Something I've been telling you about, the Mac! What? The mysterious alien creature!
It's just a coincidence, R.J. Lewis says, that Mac also happens to be the name of one of McDonald's flagship products. A complete coincidence. To be fair, it is established early on that Eric's family loves acronyms.
Here's your toe.
What?
Tuna on whole wheat.
Oh, thanks.
That's not forced at all. The keystone brick in Mac and Me's archway of product placement is the McDonald's party scene and dance number, where the film's story grinds almost to a complete halt for an extended McDonald's commercial. Famously, this also features the first, and if McDonald's gets their way, probably last, on-screen feature film appearance of Ronald McDonald. He's played here by veteran commercial and television actor Squire Friedel, who wore the Ronald paint in every McDonald's commercial from 1985 to 1991. Although in the credits, it says Ronald McDonald appears as himself. The scene was shot in a McDonald's in City of Industry, California, which is only used for training and commercials. Despite being a fully equipped McDonald's, it serves no customers. And just like that not McDonald's in City of Industry, Mac and Me didn't serve any customers either. Despite the promotional might of a McDonald's-backed ad campaign, part of which you saw in the cold open of this episode, Mac and Me flopped hard in theaters. Part of the problem was that it opened competing with such hits as Big and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, ironically another Alan Silvestri film, but critics also tore it to shreds, with Leonard Maltin famously quipping that it was more of a TV commercial than a movie. After just 2 weeks in wide release, the film was pulled after grossing a little over $6 million against a $13 million budget. It's not the biggest box office bomb of all time, but I think considering the size of the corporation backing it, an argument could be made.
Here's what kids are saying about Mac and Me.
You gotta see it. A 10 plus. The movie was really funny. I love the action. There's just no words to describe it. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10. It was magnificent. It was cool.
Raddest movie I've ever seen in a long time. Raddest movie I've ever seen in a long time. Raddest movie I've ever seen in a long time.
Guess we should wrap this up. In 2005, Paul Rudd appeared on Late Night with Conan O'Brien to promote his latest film, The 40-Year-Old Virgin. When he was allowed to show a clip of his new film, he instead showed this.
And so they actually let us show a clip of it. So.
Let's take a look at this clip from The 40-Year-Old Virgin. Will I never learn with you.
Over the years, this has become a humorous running gag, with Paul Rudd always integrating the same Mac and Me wheelchair clip almost every time he appears on Conan's show. He even did it during the promotional tour for Ant-Man. Can't believe Marvel let him get away with that. Now 30 years later, Mac and Me has achieved B-movie infamy, partially as a result of Paul's promotion and a rediscovery of the film's ridiculous premise and execution. The McDonald's dance scene has been viewed over 1 million times on YouTube, the wheelchair scene over 2 million. It's on all sorts of best bad movie lists and must-watch lists from fans of B-movies. My question is, I guess, does it deserve it? Purely on its merits as a film, yes, absolutely. It has an awful script, bad acting and direction, terrible effects. But I'm looking at the context of the film's production, the product placement, the blatant ripping off of E.T. Now, it's not fair at all to compare Mac and Me to E.T. from almost any perspective. E.T. is a masterfully crafted, emotionally complex, stunning film in almost every aspect, and Mac and Me is not. But I'm making this unfair comparison for 2 reasons. One, R.J. Lewis has insisted that Mac is different from E.T. He says Mac has powers and skills that E.T. doesn't have. Powers like destroying and later fixing a house, dancing, driving a car, off a cliff. Director and writer Stuart Raffel also claimed that he was very careful to avoid making Mac resemble E.T., which, based on the film, is either comically ignorant or just a straight up lie. So I'd say they bring this comparison on themselves. Secondly, E.T. is one of my all-time favorite films. I even wrote a 30-page analysis on E.T. for one of my graduate courses, so don't step to my E.T. knowledge. I've come to know and love this film not just from a purely reactionary emotional standpoint, but from an academic and technical perspective too. The amount of craft and care put into it is inspiring. Mac and Me only tries to inspire you to buy fast food, and it doesn't even do a particularly good job. There are some diamonds in the rough to appreciate here. All joking aside, the way that the film handles its disabled lead character is thoughtful without being pandering. I read some interviews with Jade Calgary, and I found him pretty likable and inspiring. I feel like he got unnecessarily shafted by being in this film, which would become his only film role. Part of me wants to assume that R.J. Lewis had a good heart and saw an opportunity to tie in with Ronald McDonald House and maybe help a few kids out. But at the same time, it's impossible to ignore the fact that Lewis saw dollar signs when he saw that E.T. was successful, without taking the time to try to understand why this weird film about an alien and a child resonated with so many people. So what did I think of Mac et Moi, Meme Planet? I would recommend watching this film at least once, but do it with friends. That way you can laugh and make fun of all the boring, dragging parts in between the humorously bad scenes. So call it a soft recommendation, or a recommendation with a caveat. Infamously, when Mac's family drives away from the courthouse at the end of the film, Mac blows a bubble at the camera that says, "We'll be back." Of course, when the film flopped, any sequel plans went down the toilet where they belong. But Lewis seems to think that strong video sales means there's room somewhere down the line for a Mac and Me sequel. Personally, I think he's better off financing a Mac the Night movie, kickstarting a McDonald's cinematic universe.
It's Mac tonight. Come on, make it Mac tonight.
Thank you so much for watching, and be on the lookout soon for more content like this. If you liked the video, hated the video, leave a suggestion below and let's start a discussion. Thanks!